Hello and welcome to today's live chat with Bizongo. I hope all of you are doing really well. I am Shalmali Patkar. I head marketing at Bizongo and I'll be the moderator for this session today. 2020 has been a very interesting year, to say the least. The year threw a lot of hiccups at us, and at the same time, it also provided some very interesting opportunities. The pace at which digital adoption among businesses grew in the previous year is really phenomenal. I think it is true when people say that nothing has more strength than dire necessity. Bizongo also in the previous year saw a lot of challenges similar to what the industry faced. And we also saw a lot of trends which will shape the industry in the next few years. So, here we are today to share three actionable changes with you to transform your packaging supply chain in 2021. What these changes will help you with is it will help you address some of your long-standing packaging supply chain challenges, and it will also help you have a positive impact on your finances. So yeah, with this, we would want to dive into our webinar. Before we do that, I'll just take a minute to speak about what Bizongo does. For those of you here who are interacting with us for the first time today, so Bizongo is a cloud-based platform which provides solution for the entire packaging value chain. So right from design to procurement to payment, we have tech solutions for the entire gamut of these offerings. Great. So with that, I'm very happy to introduce our two speakers for this session today. Our first speaker is Mr. Ankit Tomar, who is co-founder and CTO at Bizongo. And our second speaker is Mr. Prakash Shetty, who is Vice President Partner Growth at Bizongo. Uh, Ankit, he leads the product and engineering functions at Bizongo, and he is very deeply passionate about building intelligent solutions which helps businesses manage their packaging requirements. As a background, Ankit is an alumnus of IIT Delhi, and he has previously worked at Microsoft India. Prakash, on the other hand, he heads our partner growth team at Bizongo. He comes with an professional experience which spans more than 19 years and across various functions such as procurement, marketing, sales. So yeah, welcome both the speakers. Hi Ankit, hi Prakash. Really happy to have you here and hope you're ready to share some very insightful nuggets with our audience today.
Yeah, definitely, Sharmali. Thanks. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Hope you're doing well.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks a lot, Shalmali, and eager to be speaking here. Hope we can add value today. Shalmali, before we get started, would it be a good idea to just take a pulse of the audience, just to get the session started?
Yeah, sure, Ankit. We would surely like to understand where our audience stands so that we can accordingly also focus on the important points more through this session. So for this, I'll just launch a poll. Yeah. So the poll for all the audience, the poll would be visible on your screens right now. It is a multiple choice poll. So go ahead and click whichever options you relate to the most, and it will help us get a good understanding of, like, where we are, what is the audience we're interacting with, and then accordingly have our content. So yeah, we'll keep the poll live for another 5 to 10 seconds. Great. So we have got 75% participation. Uh, and yeah, with that, just giving another couple of seconds for the poll for people who have not voted yet to vote, and then we will close the poll. Great. Yeah, so I have ended the poll now, and I'll just share the results also for everyone to get understanding. Yeah, over to you, Prakash.
Yeah, I think the results speak for themselves. I think at Bizongo as well, the last 1 year has been a little bit of a roller coaster with some of these challenges that we as Bizongo also faced. Highly volatile raw material prices being the number one on that list, dependence on a few supply sources. Some of the challenges across were something that we as Bizongo also faced and really had to go through the last year. Through our journey in this session, we'll try and walk through some of these and how we dealt with them. But Prakash, wasn't this the case industry-wide as well? Didn't you see that the entire industry really went through some of these challenges?
Yeah, absolutely, Ankit. I think most of these challenges were an industry-wide phenomenon, and I would like to take the audience through what are the general challenges that the industry faced. And I've been talking to my colleagues across different companies. These are like more or less commonly faced by various sectors.
Great. So I'll
Can
stop
we?
sharing the polls here and we'll move to the next slide.
Yeah.
Sorry, just adding here. So for all the attendees, there is a option to post your questions under a tab called Q&A on your screens. So if you have any questions for us, just keep posting them there. We will be taking up questions towards the end of the session for 15 to 20 minutes. Yeah, Prakash.
Yeah, we could go to the next slide. Yeah. So these are the key challenges. As I said, these are the challenges which were seen through 2020, almost across all the sectors. With the COVID and the following the lockdown, there were huge supply chain disruptions. The transporters were not able to move. Warehouses were locked up, or there were no people to work in the warehouses. Even the companies were not ready with the digital infrastructure, and suddenly they were exposed to something where, with absence of physical movement, they found it extremely challenging to respond. On the other side, as far as consumers are concerned, there was a sharp decline in the retail sales. Again, because of the lockdown, the social distancing, there were people they didn't want to go out, and further compounded with the logistics challenge that impacted the sales at the consumer side. Additionally, on the internal front for companies, almost everyone at one point in time was working from home. And this was a pretty unusual situation. And this required a lot of people to immediately change track, as well as get ready with their digital infrastructure, and also for people to get used to this very unusual thing of being at home and coming on the calls or through VTC. So that was a big change from a soft perspective. And then lastly, to compound everything, raw materials, which are, and we saw that in the earlier poll, that the people feel that raw material was a big challenge. And these fluctuations, it is not just about prices increasing, and which was having an impact on the overall profitability. But at the same time, the companies were not getting the right visibility where the prices were very volatile. So Ankit, in hindsight, I think this is, as far as my experience is concerned, last 20 years, I have never come across such a situation, such an unusual situation where there are so many challenges happening across all the sectors. So with that, let me touch upon the what are the topics that we are going to cover in the next 30 minutes. We are going to talk about how do we prepare ourselves for the raw material price fluctuation. So important one right on the top. The second one is how do we improve the cash flow for your business, and the third one is how do we replace redundant processes with effective technology.
Great. I think at this stage, let's go ahead and have one more poll just to understand our audience what is among these points, what are they most excited to learn about. So I'm launching one poll. Yeah, it should be visible on your screen. Please do let us know which of these problem statements are you most excited to learn about today. We have 82% who have voted. Just giving it another couple of seconds. Perfect. So 90% have voted. So I'll close the poll at that. Yep. And these are the results which we are seeing. Yep.
Okay. Okay, great. So almost like almost more than half of the audience is interested, as you know, what is a favorite topic is to look at how technology can transform their systems as well as their lives. So definitely we'll spend good time on that particular topic.
Great. So I'm stopping this. We'll move on to the next slide.
Yeah. Sure. So looking at the first actionable on how do we manage raw material price volatility. Uh, Now, in the last 6 months, especially in the later part of 2020, following the COVID and the lockdowns, we saw that corrugated boxes, which is a key element of the entire packaging portfolio, the prices of these boxes went up almost like a 30 to 40%. Why this happened is because of the raw material price volatility as well as the increase. You might know that the corrugated boxes made from kraft paper, they are dependent on international recycled waste. Most of this waste comes from China, and because of the lockdown, the movements had stopped. Even the generation and collection of waste in these local units in China, it came to a standstill. And then because of the export restrictions, the movement, lockdown, everything, the recycled kraft paper or the recycled waste paper was not available for the Indian paper mills. So what the mills did is that with whatever it was available, they were producing the paper. At the same time, they found exporting the kraft paper out into other markets as lucrative, and it further compounded the problem and reduced the supply, and therefore increasing the prices of the kraft paper. Similar is the case with other commodities also, which are impacting packaging. You know how crude behaved. It crashed immediately after the initial part of COVID, and then it started going up, having its impact on prices of polymers like PP, BOPP. And similarly, because of the restrictions, the metals also started moving up. Now, the question is whether this kind of a volatility, whether this is expected to continue in the future. Uh, we don't know. We are not sure. But I can definitely say that there is merit in looking at how we can manage the volatility. Unless and until you are a very large customer for a particular commodity, you cannot influence the availability as well as pricing of the commodity, and therefore it is best to work around the situation. So this is what we have learned, and which we would love to share with you on what are the strategies to work around this kind of a situation. So first and foremost, we would recommend that you identify what are your key commodity drivers, on what is it that impacts your materials in the upstream. For example, if you're buying a lot of plastic jars and caps, the commodity driver is like a PP and polyethylene. So these polymers you can track, and if the volatility is high, you should track it very, very regularly. I would recommend do that on a monthly basis. How do you get the data? There are websites like polymerupdate.com which will publish this data, and these are services that they provide. But you can also get into the website of the large manufacturers. They publish the data on a regular basis. And with that data, you should be able to track these prices. Similarly, for craft paper, although the exact prices are not published, but using your relationship, you can connect with your suppliers, either the paper mill or the distributors, and plot a few key grades of the craft paper. And if it is to do with some metals, you could use some of the metal exchanges which give you either the domestic or the international prices. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that this may not be accurate. It may not accurately depict what material you are actually buying. What is important is the movement on how much the prices have changed. So that's about the first one. The second thing is that you need to have very, very clear contractual terms with your packaging suppliers. For example, for a corrugated carton, you could agree with your supplier that only when the price changes beyond a plus or a minus 5% for paper, you'll effect a corresponding change in the buying price of the carton. And considering a contribution of paper, say for example 70% contribution in a carton, and you agree to make that change effective after 1 month, so that you get enough time to be able to sort out the internal processes, as well as you know that the supplier is going to keep that inventory. The third point that you should do is forecasting for your key input materials. From my since I worked in GSK, I can take that example. Like Horlicks is the largest selling brand for GSK consumer. It used to be at that point in time. And out of those, we used to identify specific SKUs which contribute to the largest share of business. And we would plot all the packaging materials which are required, which go into these products. So we'll list down all the plastics, bottles, shrink sleeves, cartons. And for each of these SKUs, we would look at the macroeconomic outlook on how the crude is supposed to behave in the next 1 year, as per our understanding, as well as some micro factors like talking to the suppliers on what's happening in the market. So this will help you give an outlook to your sales and marketing team, so that if there is a volatility, it is taken care of on the selling side through corresponding changes in the pricing, and it helps you maintain your healthy margin, as well as not go low on the competition. So these are the three things that you need to keep in mind for raw material price fluctuations. Yeah, coming to the second part of our topic, which is on cash flow management. Now, one of the important things I've learned from conversations with various brand teams is that there is a lot of value which inventory optimization can bring to the table. Now, it is not that the brands don't realize this particular value. It just seems that sometimes people would look at some quick fixes or some trial and error methods or some manual ways of optimizing the inventory, and therefore it may not give the right result. Taking an example from Bizongo, what we did during the last year is we did this for one of our clients, that the client was holding a total packaging inventory of 1.07 crore at any point in time. We worked with them and we provided a solution which was based on 4 strategies that we deployed, and we were able to get their inventories down. After the project was done, even we were pleasantly surprised with the amount of reduction that it brought in. Can you so my ask to the audience is, can you guess randomly on what is the kind of reduction, to what amount did we bring this particular inventory, which was 1.07 crore? What did it come down to?
Yeah. So Prakash, I think why don't we give the audience a poll to answer this? I'm just launching one more poll. Yeah. So it should be visible on your website. Would like to know what is your guess in terms of how much the final cost came down to? What was the reduction like? We have some people answering on chat as well. So we have 76% people who have voted, just giving it another 4-5 seconds. Yeah, great. So more than 80% people have voted. So I'll end the poll now and sharing the results.
Okay, great. So close to 40% of the people have guessed it right. So 42 lakhs is the resulting inventory which we were able to achieve. And you would guess that this is a massive reduction. So let me explain what are the 4-point strategy which went behind this particular change. Traditionally, the kind of exercise which is used for inventory planning is based on forecasting. That based on the consumption forecast, you would fix a particular inventory buffer, and then you will be ordering inventory in line with what is the gap against that buffer to make up for the deficit. The challenge in that method is your consumption patterns could change at the same time. You could also be raising manual orders. We changed that with technology. We brought in auto replenishment tools, which could calculate automatically the buffers which are required in the system, and we would create a norm in our warehouse that how much inventory is required to be kept. Against that norm to be kept at the warehouse, the system would automatically shoot orders to the respective vendors for making up for the deficit, and this deficit is to be supplied by the vendor, so that the reorder point is set back to the norm. The actual inventory is set back to the reorder point. We further gave that visibility to our vendors. The vendors can see in their system, they can see the inventory health of an SKU, what exists in the Bizongo warehouse, and very simple color mechanism they can make out on what is to be prioritized. So if something is a black or a red, that is super urgent, and it needs to be supplied today or max by tomorrow. And that made life easy in terms of planning. We further improvised this by also asking some vendors to maintain inventory at their end, and also creating a system to take care of that in terms of Bizongo getting the right visibility, and that vendor managed inventory also being part of our overall calculations and the auto replenishment. We also saw when we were working with the client that there were some suppliers which were supplying them materials from far away locations, and because the client came on our platform, we were able to develop some local suppliers from our network and provide those services to the client. So when you bring down the overall lead time of transport, automatically you'll be able to get a better. You need to keep lesser of inventory because you'll be able to respond faster. Great. So I know this could have been a little bit complicated to understand in theory, and therefore let me take you through an example of what we did. So when I said that there is a norm to be kept at our warehouse, how we calculate the norm is that we first understand what is the average daily consumption. We multiply that with the replenishment lead time and take an extra 20% buffer to create the norm. This is an example for one of the fast moving SKUs of the client. And we saw that they were consuming on an average some 616 cartons in a day. And we saw that the vendor would require 15 days to deliver it to the Bizongo warehouse. So that is the replenishment lead time. So 616 multiplied by 15 and a 20% extra is close to some 11,000 cartons. So we kept 11,000 cartons in our warehouse, which we believe is then optimum norm to be maintained. And when we saw what the client was keeping before we started working on the project, they had an inventory of 18,500 cartons. It's almost like a month of the average consumption. And because we were supplying to them whenever they require the stock, and that was a matter of 7 days time. We calculated on how much inventory they need to keep, which is 616 into 7 days and a 20% extra, which was like only 4,315 cartons. So that was a massive change, like say 18,500 going to 4,315 at the client location. And this was only for one of the fast moving SKUs. So you can imagine what it can do if you can implement this for all kinds of, for the entire portfolio that you have. Yeah. Yeah, we can go to the next slide. Right. Now, what you can further do to improve your cash flow is through a vendor financing program. So you could actually provide a better service or a better perception to your vendors by paying them early, and at the same time improve the cash flow. Now, this may seem counterintuitive, like, okay, you might think, how is it that you pay the vendor early, at the same time you improve your cash flow? But it is not. What you could do is you could bring in an NBFC onto your platform. The NBFC, upon your approval, can pay to your vendor in a short lead time, wherever the vendors are requiring that money faster. So this money can be paid in 3 to 5 days, while you can pay to the NBFC at a later date. This is what we did in Bizongo. We deployed some of the NBFCs on our platform, and we were paying them faster, while the client was paying us in, say, 30 days, 45 days, or 60 days. With that, what happened is, for vendors, obviously they were getting early payments for all the invoices, and they were able to utilize this extra money for growing their business, and for doing and to take care of their finances. And therefore they were giving better services to us. Their perception about Bizongo, it improved, and our relationships improved. We are getting better service. At the same time, for Bizongo, it meant a better working capital for us as well. And additionally, we were able to get cash discounts from the vendors because we were paying them faster. So in a nutshell, it was like a win-win situation for both the parties.
Prakash, one thing I've noticed is the question that usually comes when we talk about vendor financing is usually that how do I go about doing such a partnership? Because as a manufacturer or as a supplier, I have access to banks, but the access to capital I have is in terms of maybe overdraft facilities or a loan, and all of them require collateral to be put. What I would suggest to anybody who's looking to get into a partnership like that is, I'll give you an example of how we do, right? As a company, we've built these relationships with a large number of NBFCs who give better and better rates, and we keep improving that service as we work with them more and more. As a partner, you can work with these digital platforms where the documentation is low. The collateral, there is no collateral because you already have an invoicing history with the platform. So you don't really need to give any collateral. Becomes a cash flow for you faster. Now, another question which comes is it applicable for every partner, and should every supplier go for it? What we believe is that any supplier who's looking for growth, if you are looking for growth and you have 1 crore of your capital stuck in FDs against which we are getting overdraft facilities, it will not help you grow faster. If you are looking for growth, invest your capital into growth in buying new machinery, bettering your processes, investing in your digital infrastructure, while for your cash flow, utilize these lines, which are low documentation, collateral free lines for you to run your working capital faster. And though you may have to share a percentage of your profits to get these lines, but because you will be able to invest that capital in your growth and grow very fast, at the bottom level, your profits after tax will increase, in a significant way. Just imagine that if you're doing 100 rupee business today and you earn 2 rupees, if you give if you start doing 1,000 rupees tomorrow and you earn the same 2%, even if you have to give that 1 rupee, in absolute terms you'll earn much higher. So growth always helps you do better. So why give that money in an FD for an OD facility? Why not utilize such schemes to do better? It will increase liquidity for you. It will help you invest in your growth. And from a brand's perspective, when you are able to give cash flow to your partners, they will be able to give you a better service. They will be able to work better. They will be able to give you a better pricing as well, because they'll have extra capital to invest in their growth. They will have their working capital needs will get satisfied in this way. So that's how really it works for us. Yeah, we move ahead. Now, finally, before we actually move to the next slide, we have a question for the audience before we really get into deploying technology as a key lever. We just wanted to know what your view is. Shalmi, you'll run the poll.
Yeah. Just launching the poll. Yeah. So here we would like to understand from the technology angle, what is the sort of supply chain visibility which our audience has at the moment? Yeah. So keeping the poll live for another 10-20 seconds. Sixty percent people have voted till now. Would urge the others to also vote. We'll give this another 5 seconds. Great. So close to 70% have voted. Ending the poll, and yeah, here are the results.
Perfect. I think very happy to see the poll in some way show that some of the people on the call do have supply chain visibility of their packaging orders, and that's I'd like to congratulate them on really having invested some part of their investment into the digital infrastructure. But when a large part of the audience, as we can see, also doesn't have that visibility of packaging orders. When we talk about supply chain in general, I would say not just packaging, anywhere where any part of your supply chain, you should try to invest a lot in getting the visibility into the supply chain, because that visibility helps you react very fast. Now, what I will do is I will talk about the supply chain in case of packaging, or not just packaging, but any unbranded finished goods. How does the supply chain work? Where are the pitfalls, or in what spaces will it become? Where all can you go wrong? And in each one of the cases, what can you do to make sure that you have that visibility and you're taking the right decision at each one of the steps? So when you look at any packaging life cycle, the first part, when you really start thinking about the packaging, is your specifications management. It is an unbranded good. It is going to get manufactured. What needs to get manufactured is not ISI certified, or is not a standard product. Everything is customized. You are really thinking about what you want. So the most important part becomes defining the right specs. And while we go through this cycle, we'll take one product and try and walk through some of the how that product goes through the life cycle. So we've been talking about corrugation as a corrugation box. Let's take that as an example. Corrugation box has specifications right from BF, blend breadth, height, your paper quality, all of these. If any of these factors is compromised, you will not have the right product in your hands. So it's very important that you share the right specifications with the partners. They're visible and signed off from both you and your partner, and they are live. Whenever you make any changes, the partner is automatically intimated. A lot of losses and a lot of ambiguity comes up, and we've seen in our journey as Bizongo as well, when the partner doesn't have visibility into the right specifications, even though the intent was right, the product that ends up being manufactured is not something the brand can use, and at that point it becomes a wasted effort loss of capital and a loss of the product in itself for everybody involved. The other part is also making sure your quality standards are shared with the partner as well, and they're also live in your supply chain. The partner knows what quality standards you have to adhere to, because it is a manufacturing first process, and some of you would be manufacturers on the call. You understand that you will not get everything right in the manufacturing process. There will be 0.5 to 1% variances. So you need to understand what's the tolerance the client time. The brands need to make sure that the tolerance, the quality parameters, the quality standards that the brand has are live, and the partner is shared, and the partner is able to assess them every shipment. So the most important part of getting a relationship started with any partner, any brand, and you should, as a manufacturer or as a brand, invest in it. The second part, when you come to packaging life cycle or any unbranded finished goods life cycle, is your artwork. Printing is one of the core things of customization. You have your, you've thought of a very good packaging, you have your imagery, you have your compliances, but if you do not get your artwork right and you print something which is not compliant in a pharmaceutical setting, or something which the brand did not expect, or the brand Pantone shade is a little off, the brand cannot use it. Right? It's again a wastage of capital, a wastage of time, a wastage of effort. Proper artwork management helps a brand get to market faster. It prevents any errors in the entire life cycle. And Bizong also has a product called Artwork Flow, where we help brands as well as manufacturers run up a very seamless approval cycle, so that you can get the right approvals from the customer on the platform. You can view your Pantone shades, any regulations, make sure that you're printing the right material at the right time. And it's important that as a brand or as a manufacturer, you make sure that you have an artwork management process, and it is completely digitized for anybody to approve. And you have that audit trail on the platform as well, for the brand as well as the manufacturer to know that what happened in the past. And these are complex cycles, right? In corrugated boxes, if you're printing something and it is in the pharmaceutical industry, and the specification that you printed, or the manufactured by, or anything, or even on a monocarton, is printed wrong, just the artwork will not get recalled. The entire product will get recalled. And pharmaceutical companies yearly go through billions of dollars of losses because of artwork printing errors. It's something that, as we invest in our digital infrastructure, is very important to look at. Now, once the artwork is done on the corrugated box, we have the right specifications. The next thing which comes is your vendor management, or all of your partners. Packaging, as Prakash talked about, is you always try to optimize local supply, right? But if you try to optimize local supply and you have that supply across India, how do you make sure you get the right quality, you get standardized product, and you are able to have visibility into the entire process? All of your partners have the right information, and they're able to ship everything on time, right? This is something that you should have one view where you can see your entire pan India or global operations for that matter. You should have the opportunity to be able to consolidate your partners, as well as localize your partners, because it's very important. And as Prakash showed you, the amount of inventory that we could reduce just by investing in consolidation, and just by investing in localization of the partners for our customer, right? It's very important that in your life cycle you have one view of all of your partners digitized on one platform, be able to see their performance, be able to see that it's completely localized, and have opportunities to consolidate as you start building up your supply chain. The next part of your supply chain in packaging is fulfillment. Now, when this is the question that I asked, do you have, when I say visibility in supply chain, we don't mean just visibility of your fulfillment. It's not about tracking the truck once it's left the factory. It's about making sure that you have visibility of the manufacturing process. When it's getting manufactured, you have visibility of specifications, you have visibility of artworks. Then you have the visibility of that fulfillment cycle. Once the manufacturing is done and it's getting delivered to your doorstep, you have that visibility to make sure you can plan ahead. Because what we have seen most of the times is, as a brand, you will come to know one day or on the last day when you were to receive delivery that you don't know what happened, right? You don't know whether it reached on time or not. But if you could have figured out that there are delays in the raw material procurement, or there are delays in the first run of the manufacturing batch, you could have reacted better, made backups, and really not let your sales get affected. This is specifically what we call visibility, and should be something that you invest in as a brand, as well as a manufacturer. This can become your core service to your customers, because if you are one of those who gives entire visibility of the process to the customer, a customer will prefer to work with you. The last part of the supply chain is, you'll go to the next one. Yeah, Tehseen? Anyway, I think the last part of the supply chain is making sure that you are able to manage your payables as well. You are able to give that visibility across to your supply chain partners, as well as to have that visibility on your end. Make sure that there is a very clear, closure of your entire cycle, because that is the end part when the partner gets paid for all the effort that the partner is putting, and he's very clear on that. The after the fulfillment scale, the what do you call, acceptance and of the material, as well as the payments of the material, is visible to the partner as well as to the brand, to make sure that they're able to cycle back on them. You will bring up the presentation in a minute.
Yeah, I think Tehseen had some problem. Is this visible?
Sure.
I'll do
Yeah,
it
yeah.
in the meantime.
Yeah, it's visible.
Great. So
Last
I'll-
part, one,
Yep.
as we talked about, payables as part of the fulfillment process. One more thing which is very important is reporting. As a brand, you want to know what are the opportunities in your supply chain. As a brand, you want to know that, how do I optimize it better? What are my insights? How do I make sure that I'm buying the right material, the right price, and how do I scale it up from there? And that becomes a key lever as well in making sure that as a brand, your process which you digitize is really helping you across. So as we walk through the supply chain, what I wanted to show through this entire cycle was that it is not just about visibility in the transportation domain. It's really about making sure that your entire process from spec till you're reporting it digitized, for you to be able to become reactive and responsive. One example, you'll go to the next slide, Shami. How does a digitized supply chain help you? At what scale does it help you, right? So I'll take an example of one of our customers, Urban Clap here. We actually supplied 70,000 PPE kits to 1,500 pin codes in the last few months during the pandemic. We shifted to PPE very fast. So I'll give some background. When pandemic hit in March and everything was shut down, there was a huge demand for PPE. Same for Urban Company. They started going back to work, there was that fear in people whether it'll be safe for people to come to their homes. So they invested a lot in making sure that their partners have the right PPE kits as well as safety equipment to go and service the customers, right? And that's when they turned to us, because the scale was huge. They have 25 to 30,000 partners. We at a monthly scale delivering a large number of shipments to the entire country. Doing this manually is just impossible. That's where our digital infrastructure actually helped us start a new category, instantly convert and give them an ability to do this, ship at so many locations with the visibility of the supply chain, the production, as well as the entire cycle to the customer. And that helped us really deliver the 70,000 shipments across the entire pipeline. Now, I think before I close the webinar and take questions, I wanted to summarize an overall way. We started the webinar really with 3 takeaways, right? What are your 3 action items if you want to make for 2021, if you want to make your supply chain more and more efficient, right? Be clear on your vendor contracts and key commodity drivers. Have that view and constantly plan ahead, because as Prakash said, you cannot influence the price of the commodity, but you can make your supply chain more resilient. You can make yourself more resilient to any changes. For packaging specifically, don't forecast auto replenish. If you take this as the supply chain, if you try and implement this as the supply chain, you will reduce wastage and inventory in the entire supply chain. Everybody will have to keep less inventory, and that is when it becomes very efficient for you. The third point, digitize your entire supply chain. If you do not digitize your entire supply chain, there will be inefficiencies, and those inefficiencies will impact your cash flows as well as your ability to react in cases when, in a case where supply chain needs to be much more resilient. So these are the three areas which we believe we wanted all of you to take back with you. Now I think I'll open it up for any questions. We do have a few questions on Q&A and chat. I think
So
I'll let
just
Shamini try.
before we start the questions, one last poll for everyone, just for us to get a gist of, like, what are the areas where you're looking to focus on in the coming year. So yeah, and also get an idea of where your colleagues in the industry have their focus on in this year 2021. So the poll is live. Do give us, do vote, and we'll let another 20 seconds. Great. So around 65% people have voted. Just another couple of seconds here, and then we'll close the poll. Yeah. Yeah. So these are the results. Yeah, Ankit.
Yeah, I think thank you everyone for uh, giving us these insights as well. And as we see supply chain visibility and demand planning becomes one of the key factors, and that is something we wanted all of you to take back as well, that for packaging, if we start auto replenishing, it can really help us move the needle. I think we'll take some of the questions on the chat, shall we?
Yes, Ankit. So you can, I have actually added the questions to the sheet which you have. If you can just go by that, those are in order of how we have received them. So you can start with the question by Mr. Salil Rana. I'll populate more in the meantime.
Sure. For somebody as an electronics manufacturer starting up, having not more than 500 SKUs per month, what is a good packaging strategy? Where to look for vendors, how to finalize vendors, and what things to keep in mind, even in terms of design, if any. Yeah, I think I'll take this up. When you think about packaging, packaging tells a story, right? So when you think about the design of the packaging, the one thing that you should keep in mind is, that's the only medium of communication for a brand in a retail shop to its customers. Are you being able to tell your value proposition and story very clearly on the package? That's something you should keep in mind. While looking for vendors, even the electronic manufacturing area, I think India is fast becoming a hub for electronics as well. With China and the dynamics that as a country we have with them, there is a lot of opportunity opening up with the government also really investing in it. So you should be able to find partners. But what I would suggest is find partners who will support you at your initial scale and with whom you can grow as well. Rather than going to the largest of electronic manufacturers, go with somebody who is at a medium scale and can help you grow, and they can grow with you as your business scales. They'll give you a long-term view and really a partnership to build with a partner. Yeah, I think the second question is, who was managing the working capital when inventory managed by vendor? I'll take this one. Okay. Prakash, you can take this one.
Yeah, sure, Ankit. So this question is from Gutula Venkateswar Rao on working capital at the vendor end. So when we say that we got the vendor to carry working capital, it doesn't mean that they had to increase their cost. Obviously, if inventory is held with the vendor, the working capital would be of the vendor. And even before this particular change, they were carrying inventory because there were fluctuations in how we would ask them, or a client would ask the vendor. What our system would do is to remove all these the manual interventions and put a method to this and optimize and suggest a particular inventory which needs to be kept with the vendor. So this is a better planning which is automated. At the same time, it wouldn't come at any extra cost for the vendor because in a random way they would all anyways carry it in the past.
I think I'll add just one point to what Prakash said. What we have seen through our data is that after implementing auto replenishment, vendors have been able to reduce the inventory they also keep with themselves. Because with forecast planning, a lot of times you would have experienced it yourself that the requirements are coming very ad hoc, that one day I need these many, then something stocks out, I need more. So even though the client is not saying, the partners end up inventorizing just to make sure they're able to give the right experience. And if, as Prakash said, it's an automated way to do it. So really it's not a cost increase, it's a saving for even the vendor side.
Yeah. Great. So the next question is from Mr. Kushkar Srivastav. Ankit, I think you can take this. I'll just read out the question. What would be the commercial delta for any prospect, say FMCG, looking to engage with artwork management, etc.?
Yeah, I think if it is only about artwork management, Kushagra, we do offer a platform separately as well, which you can use just for artwork management. And the commercials there are on our website, but otherwise you can get in touch with us and we can really share it with you. But when you talk about implementing the entire supply chain, the cost delta will be, you will save, you will not invest. Because as your supply chain, what we call it is total cost of ownership, right? So your total cost of ownership will reduce. Just imagine it this way, that if you're able to reduce your inventory, the savings there are high on the storage cost as well as on the working capital side. If you are able to make your supply chain more effective, where you're getting deliveries faster, there are no stock outs, so the sales are not getting affected. That entire saving is much higher than what you will anytime invest in the entire digitization process, right? So that's how you should look at it. It is a future strategy. It is not going to give you immediately the next day everything, but as you invest more and more into it, it will help you save. According to our calculations, what we've seen is you're able to reduce your total cost of ownership anywhere from 10 to 20%, and the investment that goes into it is not more than 2 to 3%, right? So that's how it usually varies, but it depends from company to company, and you need to look deeper into it to get an accurate answer.
So going to the next question, this question is from Mr. Jagdish Chandran. I think Prakash, you can pick this up. I'll just read it out. So Jagdish says, I work with Manik Anchor Cochin. My doubt is on BMI. What will be the percentage impact on product costing when the vendor manages the inventory? And typically, how many days inventory is managed at vendor's end?
Yeah, sure, Shalmali. So first part of the question we actually touched upon with the earlier conversation that if you have the right discussion and engagement with the supplier, it should not result into any additional impact on the product costing because in a random way the vendor is already carrying inventory. You are just getting a method into all of this. So product costing should not get impacted. Also, as long as you ask the vendor to keep a reasonable level of inventory, and that's the second part of the question, that how many days is optimum. Typically in our system, and what we have learned is you look at how many days the vendor requires to produce a typical quantity of dispatch, which we call as a production lead time. So if that is, say, for example, 7 days that the vendor needs to produce, if you keep 7 days of inventory at the vendor, what it means is that they can supply you whenever you ask for, and the lead time between them and your warehouse can be cut down significantly. So that's how you can optimize what you keep at the vendor's end.
Yeah. So we are very nearing the end. We'll take another couple of questions if everyone is okay with that. So the next question is from Mr. Prathamesh Patil. Ankit, you can answer this.
Sure.
So it says, does Bizongo deploy blockchain technology to offer supply chain transparency among the value chain members?
Yeah, I think very valid point, Prathamesh. We do not do that as of today, but that's something on our plans for sure. We give visibility on one platform, but what blockchain gets inside is a trust factor that nobody can change it. Once it's deployed on the blockchain, nobody can change it. We do give the visibility part, but using blockchain, you can give that trust factor as well. And that's something on our cards for sure. Right now, we don't really invest there. But as we scale up, I think that will be something that we'll invest more in.
Great. Okay, so the next question is from an anonymous attendee. They are asking, how do we enable to work big brand like UC, Amazon, Zomato? How we can also work with this type of big brand? How can we improve our demand in product? So I think this is from a partner point of view.
I'll take this.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I think from a partner standpoint, even to work with bigger brands, packaging is a category which is pretty fragmented. So it's not 70% of our manufacturers are actually smaller manufacturers who contribute a large part. So brands are always looking to work with partners, no matter the size. From a partner perspective, I think if you invest in your digital technology and visibility, if you're able to give that to the customer, or if you work with a partner which can help you give that visibility to the partner, you will be able to work with these larger brands as well. Another factor is if you're able to innovate and show them a clear value proposition, and that value proposition comes from your digital offerings or from your product offering, that will help you get more to the doors. As far as opening the doors are concerned, there are enough digital platforms for you to go to. Bizongo is obviously one of them, but there are enough platforms there where you can go to, and we can work together to really open up the doors, because these are already some of our customers that work with us.
Yeah. Okay, a couple more questions are here. So Mr. Charan Reddy is asking how to mitigate the risk of RM price fluctuation where long-term contracts are placed with clients and to certain threshold, only sellers are taking the hit. What kind of clauses to incorporate in contracts to minimize the fluctuation? So yeah, I think Prakash, if you can take that.
Sure. So very good question. And as I said, we need to have very clear terms of engagement regarding the RM pricing with the supplier. Now, since you have brought even the client into it, and we see that in B2B, so you need to mirror those terms and conditions on the client side. That you shouldn't be getting into a position where you are facing a liability on one side of the supply chain, but on the other side of the supply chain, you are not able to pass on that liability. That's how I would say that you need to mitigate the risk.
Got it. Okay. So the next question is from Mr. Kushgal Srivastav. He's asking, I think this was a follow-up for the earlier question.
Yeah,
possibly.
it was a continuation.
Yeah, so I think we answered that already. So going to another question here, which is saying by Mr. Anil Dalvi, he's asking, do you supply packaging material against PO directly to storage location of customers pan India or a local warehouse, I guess was the question. Yeah.
I'll take this one. Anil, thank you. We do supply to customer pan India. So if you saw even in the Urban Company case study that we talked about, we really supplied the material to 25,000 partners across 1,500 pin codes directly to their homes as well. So we have the distribution capability, and with a lot of our customers, we make sure that the right packaging material is really getting delivered at each one of the locations where they need, not just the warehouse. So I think you've left your email ID for us. We will definitely follow up with you to take the engagement forward and see how we can add value.
Yeah. So just taking up the last question now. This is from Ms. Seema Bansal. She's asked, hi, I need to know how to use Bizongo platform to manage our supply chain. So yeah, I think that's great, Seema. Surely after this, the session, we will get in touch with you as well. Ankit, anything you want to add here?
No, I think it's something that we would love to present to you and your team as well. Walk through the demo of the platform in detail. So after the call, if you can leave your email ID for us here, that will be helpful. But we would, it should be there when you join the webinar.
Yeah.
Reach out and set up a session to make sure that we walk you through the entire life cycle in detail.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think that's all the questions we have had. Yeah, I hope I haven't missed any. So I think thank you all the participants for joining us today. Really great questions. Again, if you have more of them as well, uh, like, we are always available across a lot of channels. So do keep reaching out to us. After this webinar is done, we'll also share a recorded video of today's session with you all. So you can anyways go back to, like, what was presented, and if any doubts, find clarity there as well. Any closing lines from the speakers?
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. I think thanks for hearing us out. We really enjoyed the questions, and we hope that we were able to add some value to the thought process of digitizing the supply chain and really extracting more value from your operations. As we go into 2021, it is going to be a very interesting year of growth for India, for us, for the entire ecosystem as such. So we hope we were able to set you up correctly for 2021. And we're always here if you are open to any discussions. All of us at Bizongo would love to chat more and add value wherever we can.
Yeah, thanks everybody for attending, and I hope you found this useful. I also hope you would be able to use some of these things in your day-to-day work, and that's where you should also find this interesting as well as and that's why we call this as actionable steps to be taken. Yeah. Thanks.